I know a lot of you probably have pretty strong opinions about the NFL's personal conduct policy, especially if you had a player that was suspended under the guise of it. Looking at you, Cowboys fans, with Ezekiel Elliott. And I've always found it interesting that the players and the players' union have griped and moaned and pissed and bitched about it, and even some of the owners too griping and bitching about it when they ultimately agreed to this. They ultimately agreed to the policy. They ultimately agreed to give Roger Goodell, the commissioner's office, so much power when it comes to investigating and ultimately dishing out suspensions. It's like you put it in place and then you're mad about what you actually put in place. Like, you agreed to this. But just talking about it, though, is that, there is a conversation to be had. Is like, just because a player gets arrested or accused of something doesn't automatically make them guilty. And that is something we are supposed to have in this country, a presumption of innocence, innocent until proven guilty, needing to be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and all of these things that inequitably apply within our criminal justice system. But nonetheless, when you look at the history of this personal conduct policy in recent years, guys have gotten suspended for a couple of games, 6 games, for just getting arrested or getting accused and ultimately not doing anything. For not doing anything in the eyes of the courts. Not being able to bring up charges, or charges are brought up and ultimately the accused party is acquitted, which in theory should mean that they are viewed to be innocent, and yet their employer, or in this case the league that acts on behalf of the owners, will suspend the player, even though they were found not guilty. Like, somebody can make up some bullshit allegations about you as an NFL player, and you could end up being vindicated in court to a certain level or degree, and ultimately still potentially get suspended. Like, that's how crazy this can be. But then you get to the Tyreek Hill situation and how this all played out. I mean, a few months ago, this looked bad. This looked really, really bad, because what was being talked about, what was heard, what was being accused was really, really bad, all revolving around Tyreek Hill and his fiancée, or whoever the hell she was, and their young child and a broken arm, and who did it. Like, that's the real tragedy here. Tyreek Hill, who has a history of domestic violence, mind you. This is not something out of the blue. This is not something out of character. Like, sometimes you can be damned to your history no matter what you try to do to change it. But there is also an element of, with certain things, your history is your history. And sometimes that leads you to believe that that person might have been involved in something. And look, ultimately, who knows if it was him? Who knows if it was the woman? Who knows if it was both of them? Who knows if it was none of them? It was some other freak bullshit. A lot about this whole thing has kind of smelled really bad. Looked really bad, sounded really bad. That I totally believe. Now, I'm not here to say whether Tyreek Hill was innocent or guilty or not, because ultimately I am not a court of law and I just don't know enough to know. The real tragedy in all of this that will ultimately be forgotten, because Tyreek Hill is a superstar in the National Football League, is that a young child had its arm broken and is potentially in an abusive household, an abusive situation. That will be forgotten, and that's the real tragedy here. But imagine my surprise when the commissioner's office made a statement that said that Tyreek Hill was not going to be facing a suspension. Huh? You're suspending 6 games, Ezekiel Elliott, 6 games, when he didn't get convicted of anything. And yet, and still, Tyreek Hill, who has a history of domestic violence that has been litigated in court and proven, he has copped to it, he has pled to it, whatever the hell you want to call it. The bottom line is, he is a convicted domestic abuser, and if I'm not mistaken, it was with a pregnant girlfriend, and was it this same woman that we're talking about here now? There's a history here. And for the NFL to come out and say that they take a stand against domestic violence, they take a stand against this, To then sit there and say they're going to suspend Tyreek Hill for no games, to me, screams of hypocrisy. Now, if Tyreek Hill ultimately went to trial and was found not guilty, then to me, whether we like that or not, that should be the standard that's held up, and that should be the standard that he's held to. And as a result, I would agree, in theory, there should be no suspension. But it just seems like it's going against recent precedent, where guys are being accused, guys are either having charges dropped or charges are being withdrawn, or they're being acquitted, and they're still getting suspended by the league. What makes the Tyreek Hill situation so different when he actually does have a history of this? And if you're going to say, well, we have no evidence that we can come to that directly points to him having violated the personal conduct policy, well, what the hell happened with the Ezekiel Elliott or so many other guys that they did? I don't get it. And if nothing else, maybe the dude needs a couple of games. Maybe he needs 2 or 3 games to stop acting like a jackass. To give him a little reminder that nothing is guaranteed. Tomorrow is not promised to anyone. And you could lose your NFL privilege just like that. Maybe that's what's needed. So I imagine there are a lot of Cowboys fans that are kind of stunned and disappointed specifically, thinking of a recent example like Ezekiel Elliott. And you know what? When talking about Zeke, I'm with you. I don't get it. I just don't get it. What the hell did Zeke do that was so bad that he got 6 games, and Tyreek Hill, with a history of similar type of instances, got nothing? No games. The hell is that about?